it's such a ballsy way to look at life, because nobody's holding out a red carpet. Yes, I've had success, and yes, I've been given many opportunities. But if you don't think I'm fighting for the next opportunity as hard as I was before, you're wrong.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
Wow, what a star we have for today's conversation. This lady is wise, powerful, empathetic, kind, compassionate, the real deal, with such a nice, uplifting and positive outlook on life. She really got me thinking in this chat and challenged me softly in great and powerful ways. A few tears were shed, but all in good fun. This is an amazing story of resilience, brilliance, and drive, and you'll love it. So let's officially introduce today's guest. Geneva Carr is a Tony-nominated actor for her performance as Margery in the original Broadway cast of Hand to God. You may also recognize her from her many roles such as Marissa Morgan in Bull. She's also recently directed an episode as well, which is pretty cool. Plus, she's been in It's Complicated, Love and Other Drugs, Wonder Wheel, Ava's Possessions, Law and Order, Younger, Deadbeat, Elementary, Blue Bloods, Person of Interest, The Good Wife, Spin City, Royal Pains, and Sex and the City. And we're not done yet. Some of her theatre credits include Trevor, Just Sex, I Want to Destroy You, Finding Claire, Rose's Dilemma, Clash by Night, and Betty's Summer Vacation. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, such as mentors and teachers, people-pleasing, tough love, directing, Bull, Michael Weatherly, Releasing and Letting Go, her Tony nomination, Helen Mirren, Confrontation, Working as a Banker, and Rejection and Resilience. Before we get into this epic chat, if you'd like to keep up to date with the latest info regarding the podcast, follow Funny in Failure on Instagram and Facebook. I often post short clips and other cool stuff to keep you in the loop for upcoming and previous episodes. Also, if you'd like to follow me personally, I'm on Instagram and Twitter under Michael_Kahan. That's Kahan with a K. And lastly, the podcast comes out every week, 5 p.m. Mondays, Australian Eastern Standard Time. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any other terrific episodes. I hope you enjoy. I love hearing stories about people that have pushed us in a positive direction. Sometimes we call them mentors.
Oof.
And I would
so many.
Ooh, and there's one that I found out about, and maybe we can talk about other ones as well, about Jane Hoffman, if I'm getting that.
Thank God I brought a tissue. I had a feeling you're going to make me cry.
Oh, just take your time.
Have you heard about Jane? Did you know her from someone else besides me?
No, just from you.
Oh, well, I wish you had known Jane. She was about 5'4", a real bitch. Truly tough as nails, a fantastic actor, a fantastic director, an amazing teacher, because she was such a hard ass that when I first met her in an acting class in the 90s, I was still banking at that time, and I was just taking a class for fun. And she said, everybody bring a headshot. And I said, well, I don't have a headshot. I'm a banker. And she said, you're old. You're getting older every day. There aren't going to be any parts left for you soon. I was in my 20s. And it's pretty scary. And I remember I was doing a monologue with her from Getting Out by Marcia Norman, working class, Southern, I come from the South, foster care. I thought I had this character, I can cry on cue. And Jane kept trying to explain to me that acting is living in the moment. And I couldn't understand it because I thought my accent's good. My tears are coming out of my eyes. So she snuck up behind me in the middle of the class and smacked me in the back of the head. Oh. And I was so stunned and so hurt. And, I'm such a type A people pleaser. And she said, act, do the monologue now. And I did the monologue, and she said, you're welcome. That's living in the moment. That's acting. And She hated me. And then I got to do a play with her about a year later. And she said, I don't like you. I think you're namby-pamby, but this writer likes you. So I'm going to give you a shot. And we were besties for years after that until she passed away at 95. Oh. And she was just, I have pictures of her all over my house. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about her. Hence Hoffman. Is that
Oh, is that one?
Well, he's in,
Hoffman? Your cat. Sam
that's
Hoffman.
Eartha Kitty, but
Oh,
Eartha Kitty's the other one. But she just had such an incredibly positive impact on my life. She also, when you're in your 20s and you're friends with someone in their late 80s and you don't feel that there's a difference,
oh
we
wow.
would hang out and we would go to the movies and walk 25 blocks. She didn't like taking a cab. She was amazing. And having people like that in your life that make you unafraid to age, unafraid to be bold, I wish everybody a Jane Hoffman.
That is so beautiful, and it's so nice that you named your cat after her as well. How did you go from her hating you to becoming like best friends?
Because when we did this play by Susan Cinnamon called, what was it called? Sweet Sand. And it was about Sandy and her best friend, the kind of loser laughing stock. And I think everybody thought Sandy, the lead, was going to get all the attention, but I got the attention. And I think that made Jane kind of stand up, and she liked me for that. She was honest. She was honest. If I had gained a few pounds and she was like, "Hey, fatty, lose it."
See, that approach doesn't work for everyone. I know she hit you on the head. I don't know if we could do that, but I'm glad it had such a positive response on you as well.
I think that she hit me because she knew that I could be better. I sometimes think that the tough love I've received in my life, and I've had a lot of it, because I can handle it. I'm sure we'll talk about the show that I'm currently on called Bull. I've had some tough love, but I think when people know you can take it, that's when they give it to you, and they give it to you out of love, because I'm super tough. If I think someone can handle the truth, I give it to them. And I'm sure I'm not always appreciated, but I speak my truth. And as I get older, it's all truth.
I really rate that as well, because I know that whether it comes from feedback, and I'm sure you've got feedback throughout your career, if people are just saying what you think or what they want to spare your feelings, you don't really go anywhere. But when someone like speaks from the truth and you're actually being authentic and you're not trying to be an asshole, that changes someone's life, i.e. Jane Hoffman. But if everyone's just like, this is great, this is amazing, you don't grow. And so I've always
Exactly.
also, I'd like to know kind of the balance between that and being a people pleaser, because I'm kind of both. And that's a hard mix to kind of.
I think we're similar. I'm the same way. And particularly a performer, it's sort of innate that you want to please. That's what you're trying to do. You're not trying to alienate people. Even when you play a villain, you want them to see the humanity in the villain. So it's always a bit of this and that. But I do see how much, and especially as you kind of mount the ladder of success, that the yes people are more and more present. So it's really good to keep the Real Talk Express people in your life. And I value those people.
Because I would imagine, given what you've accomplished, you would have so many people blow steam up your ass saying you're the best thing ever, this is amazing. How do you deal with that? Because that's like a new concept in someone's life. As in, you don't always have that, and then you've suddenly got it and it's amplified probably by like 100 times. That would also be a bit of a balance to keep your ego in check, stay creative, and also not be like a diva or an asshole, whatever you want to call it. Has that been a bit of a challenge, or you know who you are?
Oh, I know exactly who I am. And I love that you think I would be so important that people would lie to me to that extent. I am on television. There is a lot of that on television, which I don't really understand. In the theater, if somebody's late, I just call them out for it.
Nice.
But in television, we don't do that. It's weird how your paycheck, how it increases, that the honesty decreases. However, it's definitely true. The paycheck is kind of an indicator of, how many sycophants you're going to get. And trust me, I'm not very high up on any rung, but I do witness how I am not allowed to say to a fellow actor, "Hey, you're late," or "Hey, you don't know your lines."
Oh, you're actually not allowed to?
No.
Really?
It's very interesting that when people are not prepared or late or, not acting professionally, we're not allowed to say anything. And I really want someone to explain it to me, because in theater, I was always the deputy. I don't know if you have that in Australia, but we have a union deputy that makes sure that we get our paychecks and make sure we're on time. And if actors are late, I would just call the union and say, "Hey, these actors are late, dock their pay." But it happened to me. That's how I did it. One of my first job, I was late once because of the subway, and they docked my pay. I think it was $5, but that $180 paycheck was so important that $5 hurt. So I believe in, being tough, because the other people that work for us are there. That's why I do it. The crew is on time.
Yeah.
And so out of respect, and actually Michael Weatherly talking about people that you looked up to and people who have been mentors. Michael Weatherly has been amazing.
He's so nice to hear.
He's like, I hate to say father, because he would hate that since we're the same age similarly. But the very first day he gave me tons of advice, and he loves to give advice, but he never says, hey, do this or think of that. He likes to tell a story. And he's taught me, he said, don't be on time, be early, always be early. And I'm always early. And a couple of times I've gotten to go when other actors aren't on time. And I just listen to him, because he's been in the business 30 years.
Jeez.
And he's just been so helpful on the show. It's just been a joy.
There's so much to say, and I hear he just looks like a nice guy. And I know it's like hard to tell when you see someone on screen, but I think it's really important, especially when number one on the call sheet is nice and offers. Yeah, exactly. Because that creates the like team morale. It creates what's the word? Not team morale.
Dynamic, or the atmosphere. The culture.
Yes, culture. And if you've got like people at the top and you're at the top as well, then you feel it. You can see it in a show as well. And I know that you've spoken about this before, but it's also really interesting. The difference between being a regular versus being a TV series regular versus someone that just comes on every now and then. And I really like your take on how it's very different. Can you explain it to me? Because not a lot of people know about this.
Yes. And actually, I would recommend a book to people who are listening and who want to become an actor or a director. A director who used to work on Bull, who was our producing director. Ooh. Her name is Bethany Rooney. And she wrote a book called The Director Tells the Story. And I have literally bought that book 15 times to send to people, because it explains the culture of television. It's a book about directing, which I can't wait to tell you about, because I directed an episode of Bull that's going to air.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. It's so exciting. We'll talk about that later. But this wonderful book, I wish that I had read it before I'd become a series regular, because it literally breaks down who does what. And when you come as a guest star, you are shot out of a cannon. You are so nervous. You have all your lines. You know all these people from TV. If you've done your homework and you watch it, it is funny when we get guest stars who don't know who people are. And they say, what are you doing here?
Really?
I'm the leading lady. One woman, we said, oh, you did such a great job with Michael yesterday. And she said, well, who's Michael? And we said, he's the number one on the call sheet. And she said, wow. Which one was he?
Not really... not rude, but disrespectful if you're joining another project.
It's his, listen, again, Michael, the greatest teacher that I've had in television, said, our job as series regulars is to make the guest stars comfortable. Because it's hard. You show up, you have to know your lines, you're nervous, they tell you where to stand, and all the things that you learn as a series regular, you don't know. There's something that they call on the day. So when I first started as a series regular, and they said, okay, you're going to, tie the bow tie like this on the day. And it's like, but aren't we filming that today? But on the day means today. It's just the verbiage they use. So this book called The Director Tells the Story is a really great book to explain who does what the verbiage is. It helps people before they get to television. So I've given it to younger actors. I've given it to friends who want to go into directing television, because it's just very helpful. For me, it helped me because after that whole experience, it also explains what your shot list is, how you make a shot list, what a DP does. So it was helpful to me as a series regular. And then when I dipped my toe into the pool of directing, it was extremely helpful. And again, I think the best thing in your whole life, for my life, is looking for people who can teach me something. And there's so many teachers in this world. Just people can teach you about patience, about kindness. I had a little ordeal at the bank today, and I was very high strung. I had a check that was stolen. And it's the fourth time I've been to this bank to try to get this solved. And there was this guy today who just, his whole demeanor, the way he dealt with the woman on the other end of the phone, I would not have been able to do that. And I thought, God, I'm going to take a page out of his book, because he was so respectful, whereas I was so frustrated, and he got a better result than I had.
That is so nice to look for teachers, lessons, positive experiences, or just a better outlook. Because I know that in all industries, when we've been doing something for a little while, it can be very easy to be complacent or maybe become a bit negative. But for you to actively, and this doesn't sound like it's every now and then, you're actively looking to grow. That is super rare. Tell me why. Has this been something you've been wired like your whole life, or has it been something that you've been trying to challenge yourself throughout the years?
That is a great question. And I think it is how I'm wired. Not to go into too much detail, but I had a rough childhood in the sense that a lot of inconsistency. We moved a lot. We moved, every few months when I was a kid. I mean, I lived in Birmingham for 3 years, but we moved every few months. So I was in 6 different school districts, because in America, you go the school that you're closest to.
Yep.
And I always looked for outside advice or outside experiences. And so every time we moved, my brothers and I would tease each other like, hey, we're landing. We're going to go make some friends, because we never knew how long we were going to stay. And I always had a friend. I always had a teacher, or maybe a mom who lived down the street that I could kind of watch and learn from. And I had never thought of that. That's an interesting question, but I think it's part of my DNA from growing up that way, that I've always looked for people that can show me something that I don't know, whether it's how to behave or something I might want. And yeah, that's very interesting. Well,
I think it's so cool that at such a young age that you still had that kind of like foresight as well. I just think that it will keep you in a positive mindset, and reading between the lines. I know there was obviously a lot of challenges, and I found this quote that you said, can't remember where I found it. And you said, no matter how bumpy the ride, I know I'll get somewhere. And I think that's so lovely, because it's kind of true. We're going to have our ups and our downs, and there's going to be things that we, doesn't, inverted commas, go to plan. But with that mindset, it means that you can still keep on moving forward with this positive, eager lens. So I love it. Tell me about it.
Thank you. Well, I remember my step-grandmother, Grammy, who was another great influence, just a warm, loving woman who was curious about other people. And one day she said to me, oh, I never worry about you. You always land on your feet.
Oh.
And I thought, well, you never worry about me? But it gave me such confidence, because I do land on my feet. And I think it's because there isn't a choice. I haven't had a safety net. I'm my safety net. I think we're all our own safety net.
Definitely.
But literally in my life, because my parents weren't very present, I was my safety net. But it's somehow it turned into joy for me that I do land on my feet. But boy, do I depend on the kindness of strangers, to quote Tennessee Williams. I have always relied on other people. And, there's that expression, look for the helpers, that, what is his name? The psychologist for children. That's his expression. Mr. Rogers.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Rogers said, always look for the helpers. And I think that's a little bit how I've lived my life, because whatever happens, look for somebody to help you, and always be a helper. By the same token, I always try to help, sometimes to my own demise, but I always want to be of service, particularly to young people, younger actors. I think because Jane Hoffman was my dear friend and was 60 years older than me, and she didn't seem older. She was so vibrant. Her son used to visit us. He's a well-known actor named Sam McMurray. And I used to think, he's such a fuddy-duddy. He's so old. We have to hang out with him.
That's amazing.
He would hate that, but
Yeah, I'm sure that he would appreciate his
but I
opinion.
try to be as helpful as she was to me, to younger actors in my life and younger people.
I say this a bit on the podcast, and I truly mean it. I think that's how you change the world, is when you are of service in some capacity where you want to help people, not necessarily have the mindset of what am I going to get back, but also for you to recognize the kindness out there. And I would imagine you navigate this how you want to, that when we're going through like tricky childhoods and there's not really that stability, it can be very easy to have a negative outlook and not really trust people or be shy. You went the other way, and I still don't understand how. I think this is amazing. And then to pick out, because I'm sure, this is always like a bit of a balance, who can we trust and who can we not trust? But I'm sure you've got an amazing radar now. But I think, yeah, like it's really, was that a nod?
I don't know if I have an amazing radar for trust.
Oh, really?
I think that I have a tendency to throw myself headfirst into challenges. Whether that's a good thing, that's up for debate, but it's certainly made my life interesting.
Ooh. Well, it sounds like you're very intuitive in the sense as well.
Possibly. You're very flattering. I don't know. I mean, I've had just as much failure as anyone else. I mean, when you invited me, I thought, oof, God, failure. Why was I chosen? Yeah, everybody has failure. It's sort of how you get back up on your feet.
Yeah.
And how you let go. And I'm not a big believer in I forgive you, but I'm a big believer in I release you.
Oh, can you go in more detail? Because this is a concept that's come up for me recently.
Oh, people talk all the time about, you need to forgive for yourself. I don't believe that's true. I think that in many circumstances, people don't merit forgiveness, and nor is it going to benefit you. What benefits you is letting go. You can't make people be something they're not. You can't make a situation something it's not. But if you release it, that is how you move on. For me, forgiveness
I
doesn't
agree.
offer me freedom, but just letting it go. And, there's failure in my wake, and bye. I'll try to do better the next time, but there's no sense carrying it around. I got enough baggage.
It's a really interesting take. I interpret that statement as if someone's kind of wronged you, depending on obviously it depends on the case, but let's just say someone's done something inverted commas really bad. We're not going to become best friends with them and say, I forgive you, let's be best friends. Obviously, we can have conversations. It depends who they are. Are they more narcissistic? All of that stuff. If it's a close friend, we can chat it out. But then to just say look, we're not going to be best friends in your mind, but I release it. I don't need to hold it on and I can move forward. Is that kind of what you're saying as well?
Yes. And in all kinds of relationships, that's true. A friend of mine once said, and this is 20 years ago, she said, some friends are chapters and some are novels.
Oh, yes.
So I've had friends for years and years and years that I can never imagine leaving. And then just like relationships, romantic relationships, you can have something that's really fulfilling and intense and wonderful, and it's lived out its life. And I don't believe in having regret or animosity for that. I mean, I've broken up with friends where it just isn't offering us each other what it used to. And I'm sure that I've been let go and not even realized it. But again, some friends are novels, some are chapters, and they might have been a great chapter, but you don't have to regret that you enjoyed it.
It's a really good take seeing it as a relationship in terms of a romantic relationship in the sense, because it's more accepted that if the partners aren't getting along, you move your ways.
Right.
But with friends, it's the same thing, or in my mind. And, I may have been someone's chapter as well, or someone may have let me go and I haven't known either. But I think it's so important to realize that, because we assume that once I have, that if someone's been my friend, I have to be friends with them for the rest of our life. But as you said, and it's really rewarding in a sense to know that they played a really, hopefully positive impact in my life, or I've played it in their life. And then, you know what, this just isn't right for now. It doesn't mean it can't happen later on, but for this moment, not meant to be.
The other thing I would say about that is, I don't know what this has to do with anything. However, my mind was going, um, you don't always have to confront someone when you let them go. I'm very direct, but I'm only confrontational if I feel like I want or could change the outcome. If you realize that someone, romantically or even friendship wise, you're not positive for each other anymore, you don't need to tear them down, but you can let them go.
Yeah.
And I've done that in romantic and personal relationships, but I will confront people if I want to mend the relationship and move forward. That's when I think confrontation is useful.
I think it's really important what you say as well, especially with like some friendships. It depends on the individual. I'm just speaking from my experience. Sometimes we just know when the relationship isn't meant to go forward. And as you said, you don't really need to do anything. Just let it kind of play out. But sometimes if it's someone, because I've heard not this advice, but similar advice when you talk about letting go, that you need to argue with everyone and say these things, but sometimes it's definitely not necessary. And sometimes people want to go their own direction and we want to go our own direction. And that's fine. Not everyone is meant to go in the same area.
Well, you're not going to change people.
Yeah.
And if you know that you're going to let someone go, why tear them down before they leave? Because like in a romantic relationship, it just might not be working, but you don't have to say, you eat with your mouth open and you snore. You just don't have to do it. You can, and maybe they'll find somebody else who eats with their mouth open and doesn't mind a snore. I mean, you just don't have to be cruel about it.
Did you ever watch
That's
Seinfeld?
what I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh yeah, I love Seinfeld.
Oh, amazing. Okay, we're best friends already. It's like when Elaine is dating a guy that is known to be a terrible breaker-upper. And so he breaks up with them, but then once it's like done, he then says all the nasty things and he's already, the job's been done. And he comes in and he goes, well, you're a stupid head, or you snore, or you do all of these things. It's just so
that's the worst.
I know.
That is the worst. Like in relationships, when you have an argument about something that happened today, and then you bring up 5 years ago when they wrote that letter to your mother and didn't ask your permission or whatever it is. It's that resentment that you bring up. That's what I mean about letting it go.
Yeah, I was about to say that's exactly. You don't want to hold on to that 5 year stuff.
No.
But with the speaking of truth, I want to go back to that because I think that's really important. And in my world, that's highly appreciated. But in other people's worlds, and there's no right or wrong, I'm just talking about my experience, it can be seen as like this social norm that we don't cross, in a sense. Not saying where you walk and go, that shirt doesn't work and you don't know who the person is. But when you're in a relationship where you want to like grow and experience like love, regardless if it's a romantic relationship, I've seen, and I know other people have seen that it can be quite hard to speak a truth because we don't want to offend. We want to be the people pleaser. Tell me how you've mastered this concept.
Mastered, you're being very kind. I don't know that I've mastered it, but I do notice, and I guess I say this to particularly young women, don't be afraid about getting older. Because it does get better. Everything falls apart physically, but you as a person are a better version of yourself. That's what I found. That aging, I know what I need. I know what I can handle. I know what I can offer. And there is something about, I have this desire to speak my truth. And as I get older, I don't have a filter. I'm not as good with the bullshit, but I'm really good with the direct shit.
Oh, so when someone is direct and they're giving you the, let's say, feedback, do you take it well now? You just go, thank you. What's kind of, because feedback.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. I have not told Eric Stoltz this. I don't know if you know who that is. Eric Stoltz is Oscar-winning actor, amazing actor. He's a phenomenal director, and he is our producing director on the show. And a producing director on a television show means that he's someone who keeps the boat going, he or she, because Bethany Rooney was our producing director. They change every year. But he also directs 3 episodes a year. And when I wanted to direct, he was extremely supportive, and I shadowed him A to Z. So I watched his process from getting the script to casting to filming to editing to everything. And he shared his process. So amazing, wonderful, generous guy, but damn, does he speak his truth? And one day, I can only think he was in a tough mood, but he gave me some Real Talk Express that it was like a sucker punch. And I cried for 4 days because it was super critical advice. I don't really want to say what it is because it doesn't matter. But I heard it. It stung. And I cried privately for 4 days. And then I finally got it together because I know that all he wanted was what was best for me. He's kind of a tough love daddy. And it was about 4 days until I started filming. They have prep where you pick the actors and, do your shot list and all these things. And it was a little rough going, but, I swallowed my pride and it did help me. Was there another way he could have done it? Maybe. It was also his mood, because it's funny, someone else on the crew said, "Ooh, he said something to me that day." So I can only imagine that he was in a mood. But I know him, and I know that advice was meant for my benefit, not to hurt me. So I am grateful that he spoke to me. I don't know if he could have done it more gently, but that's all in hindsight. So I ain't mad. I think it was out of love that he did it. And, now that my process has come full circle and my episode is airing in a couple weeks, he has just continued to advise and help and be supportive. So I like the Real Talk Express. I think that when someone says it, they actually mean well.
Yes, that's a very mature response, especially when someone can be cutthroat, because I've received similar advice, whether it's with my screenplays. And look, no one's perfect. I don't do this. I don't know anyone that does it. The balance of direct to not like soul crushing and being destroyed, that can be very tough. I think that's very awesome of you that you can, with hindsight, see the good intentions of it. And I'm sure he's a lovely guy and maybe it was a one-off. But I still think that's pretty cool because, 4 days that obviously really hurt you. But to now, like with a bit of time, see how that was quite positive.
At the time, I knew what the advice was, but it was critical of how I'd been behaving.
Yep.
And it's hard when someone holds a mirror in your face and it's not flattering.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything personal. It was just, it was a professional thing that he advised me to do something. And it stung, but I heard it then. And I will take that lesson with. Listen, the reason I love Jane is because you want to talk about some tough love, Jesus. She just, I was struggling in something when she was directing me. We had to come on stage in that first play, Sweet Sand, and giggle and laugh. And she said, "Think of something funny, just do it." And she just had this attitude. She would say, "You're going to get bad directors. Maybe I'm a bad director. Just do it. Come up with a way to do it." And it's such a ballsy way to look at life, because nobody's holding out a red carpet. Yes, I've had success, and yes, I've been given many opportunities. But if you don't think I'm fighting for the next opportunity as hard as I was before, you're wrong. This wonderful show that I've been on for 6 years is coming to an end. It is very sad, but I'm now at the point where I'm just going to savor every single minute and look for what's next. And I've already been auditioning, and every time I go on audition, I work really hard, and then I'm like, why haven't they called yet? I'm waiting for that phone call. It's the nature of the beast.
I was just about to say, it's crazy that, I think you've been on for what, 6 years? Is it? Yeah, 6 years. And you hear of everyone that when the show ends, it can feel like you're starting again. We know you're not starting again, but you're going through the process again to where you got this like life-changing moment. Do you embrace that? Is it scary? Is there a whole bunch of nerves? What's going on in your mind?
It is terrifying. I have been so spoiled to have a very interesting job. There have been highs and lows, What's really lovely is this last year is almost a constant high, even with the tough love from Eric Stoltz. Getting to direct. I have asked since season 1 to direct, and they never said yes. And this year I pleaded, and they finally said yes.
That's very cool.
So I knew it was likely that the show would come to an end because it's a 6-year contract, and to see if all the actors are free, you just never know. And Michael wanted to move on; it's his prerogative. So yeah, this year has been exciting and fun. And I'm terrified, and I'm auditioning like everybody else. And I had to get my ring light, and I have to get people over and put me on tape for auditions. And it's scary. And I am scared to be back in the place where I don't know when a paycheck's coming in. I don't know when I'll be working, but I've never not worked. I've always worked because I love to work. And I don't judge success on finances. I think if you judge success on finances or attention, that's when you get in trouble.
Yep.
If my heart is in it, then I'm in it. I mean, I just mentioned this film that I'm going to do with Jet Tolentino, Asian Persuasion. I'm doing it because he's a fascinating man. The script is really unusual, and it's going to be 2 days of excitement and a lot of young artists. So I'm just happy to support that. And am I going to get rich? No. Will I be paid decently? You bet. But I just did a workshop of a play by Matthew Green at Westport Country Playhouse, which was one of my favorite theaters to work at. And we got $161, and it was like a 10-hour day, and it was life affirming. I met actors that I never would have met, worked on a brand new play that was riveting. And at the end of it, and I got to work with this director that I've never worked with. At the end of it, we then discussed it. They offer this for writers so that they can work on their writing. And I don't know if you do that as a screenwriter. Plays do it, but I think screenwriters should do it. It is such an amazing way to hear your words, and then you hear how somebody does it.
Yeah,
some plays you'll do that several times, and wow, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you just get kind of fed. Your soul is fed.
And I assume that's why you're in it as well.
Yeah, because $161 is not going to pay my rent, but it's going to feed my soul. How about that?
I think that's really important. And obviously, look, we need money to live, and I completely understand the need for money, obviously. But what I've also noticed, all the stories that I've heard guests talk about, that when they've picked a job purely on money, and obviously like getting the money can help support them, can help with ease, and maybe can help support them do another project. But when they picked a project typically just for money, it hasn't really worked out. Whether the project succeeds in whatever their definition of success is, or they didn't have a good time. But when they pick something because like their souls, their heart's on fire, it changes everything. You meet great people. It opens up opportunities. Not that they're really thinking that way, but it fulfills them in a way that money couldn't.
Well, we didn't go into this industry for money. I mean, I used to be a banker. I know that you used to work in the same industry, right? Or at least in business, correct?
Yeah.
And that was a job. And unfortunately, I remember when I took the job, the guy that I used to sell derivatives with, I was on a team that was sent from Paris to come to New York. And he woke up and thought about the stock market and investing. And I didn't. And I thought, God, I want to do that. You know, he loved being at work. I love being at work. I am lucky that whether I'm paid a bunch of money or no money, I absolutely find it riveting. And a dear friend, Megan Hill, who is a phenomenal actress and writer, who often helps me with my self-tapes, she gave me some great advice from her father. When you are offered a job, you have three things to think about: the money, the career move, and your soul. Ooh. And he used to say that at least two of those three things have to be met in order to take the job. Because when you just said, if you take a job for the money, I don't know if you can really do a good job. Because in order to act, I mean, I shot many commercials and they were never about the money for me. A commercial to me was a 30-second movie that I got to star in. And my agent, Tracy Goldblum, who's amazing, we would tell the story to other actors because That's really how you book a commercial. If you go in thinking dollars, that's not what you're thinking. You have to care about it. Do I care about, a soap dispenser? No, but I care about the woman teaching her family that this soap dispenser is a valuable addition to their home. You have to find the story. So if your heart's in it and the money's good, that's great. Or if it's a career move and you need the money, I understand it. But sometimes if just your heart is in it, you can do it. Because listen, that workshop, I don't think that it's going to do anything for my career. But if my heart is full and I feel capable of telling stories and sharing other people's stories, then that's a win-win.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, okay. That you're speaking my language. And to me, that's what, oh, and which cat's that one?
This Eartha kitty, isn't she cute?
I like her eyes. Okay, I've got 1,000 points. And it also speaks volume to you because you've gone from the banking lifestyle and then you've gone to, these are your words, like when you transitioned into acting, it was quite tough, as it would be for anyone. You get a small apartment, you didn't have hot water, I don't even know if you had a heater. So you've gone through kind of, inverted commas, the hard yard, so you can appreciate the highs and lows of, especially when you're quite established in one industry. What were you thinking when you go from, the stable paycheck and then you've gone to pursue this thing? I'm sure a lot of people would have been quite surprised or being like, why are you
When
doing
I
this?
left my banking job, I used to work for Societe Generale selling derivatives. And when I announced that I was going to leave, I didn't tell anyone why. I had seen a play in a little tiny black box theater that was so astounding. And I thought, oof, I'm going to go do that. And so I quit my job selling derivatives for Societe Generale. And about a month later, the desk that I used to work at, the entire team came to the bar that I was cocktailing in.
What are the odds?
It's happened twice, actually.
Oh,
My
okay.
first job on television on Spin City in 97, I shot, when you shoot a sitcom like that, you shoot live on Friday night, and Saturday night, the entire team came to the bar that I was working in.
Amazing.
And what's interesting is both of those instances, they were embarrassed for me, but they shouldn't have been. They shouldn't have been. Now, the French guys came and they were like, what are you doing? They couldn't understand that I was going to have to wait tables. And the people from Spin City, they all felt badly for me because I'd been a guest star on the show. It was my first time on TV. And then they felt badly for me. And I remember one of the guys gave me a huge tip, but they shouldn't have felt badly for me. And I wish that, at the time, I'm sure I felt embarrassed, but there is absolutely no shame in making a living and doing what you want to do. I've had many side jobs. It's so sweet. My neighbor today is a scientist for Pfizer. And because I have my vaccination and I got my booster, she said, oh, you should be, are you a scientist? And the other neighbor said, no, she plays a scientist on television though. She said, do you want to work for Pfizer part-time? So listen, I hope I don't have a side gig, but there is absolutely no shame in making a living. And we don't know where the world is going to go.
Exactly.
I mean,
I think that's really important to hear because I know like when I transitioned from accounting to doing this, I thought that I had to be the screenwriter and I had to be doing that full time. It's ridiculous. Like you need to survive and that's just like ego. I also find it interesting because I've experienced this a fair bit or back in the day where like people feel sorry for you or pity you. But when you realize that like every single person in the creative space is going through it or has gone through it, excluding like the small percent, you realize like you don't really care. So did you just have that foresight where you realize this is what I need to do to pursue my dreams and goals, or you didn't even?
In all honesty, I did not realize how hard it was going to be and how long it was going to take to be an overnight sensation.
Yeah.
I mean, it took years, but there is something, a dream can sustain you for a couple of decades, and I am living proof. And did I have side jobs a lot? Absolutely. I was very lucky. I can't remember how many years, but then I started making a living doing commercials, and that industry has changed a great deal. So I don't think that I could still do that, but a dream can sustain you. And I didn't mind. Listen, this is crazy, but I loved waiting tables. I was an excellent cocktail waitress.
Nice.
I used to work for Novotel. I know the city like the back of my hand. So I would see people and I would size them up. I would tell them where to shop, what show to see, what restaurants to eat at. I enjoyed it. It was a people pleasing thing. And then I worked at Pastis, which was super chic and hip. And, those restaurants were fun too. But I didn't mind it because the dream of making it just kept me going. And doing a play for free when you really want to do it, that's what I will say. Doing a play for free because you want to do it is exhilarating. And television is a blast. But as soon as money gets involved and people are worried about how much they're earning, they don't commit in the same way. My paycheck is wonderful, but it's not why I show up. And, I've often paid just to do a job. And that tells you how much I want it. And I wish that desire on every single person.
I'm the same. I wish everyone found their passion, because most
Yes.
people don't, and I completely understand. We live in a strange world at times, and it can be hard, or people don't have that influence where someone can kind of tap you in the back and say, you can do it. You had that
Yes.
within you. And yes, you've had your mentors and your Jane Hoffmans as well.
But I was internet, social media influencer, money. I was pre all of that. So I don't believe that you can be an overnight sensation. And obviously I've been proven wrong, because in the last few years, people have become famous and wealthy for doing absolutely nothing. It's why, social media is kind of leaving me in the dust, because I can't quite commit, because I don't really care. I love working. It's just not my generation. It's like tattoos. I'm too old. I don't get it, but I understand why people love them.
Yeah.
It's kind of a generational thing. So I'm old school in that sense. And I feel bad when young actors ask me how to do it, because it's different. I don't have to show my social media, but in this day and age, people do look at it to see how many people follow you. And, luckily I'm already on TV. I don't have to worry about that. But it's a little scarier for them, I think. And I feel for them.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've had a few guests that have not on social media at all, and
Good for them.
they're still doing well, which is great. I also heard you in another interview that you were quite grateful that your words, achieved success in later in life, and that you were better equipped or suited to deal with it. Can you expand on that? So
even I'm grateful, not just because I'm better suited to deal with it, but being grateful is a great way to wake up in the morning.
Definitely.
Because it took so long and it was so difficult, and I never gave up. Arriving is just so thrilling. It didn't happen by accident, and it didn't happen because I didn't try. So there's a feeling of pride, of gratitude. You do feel like hard work pays off. It doesn't always, but I'm very grateful that it happened, and that it happened now. I don't know if I would have had as much fun, because I just feel kind of a laissez-faire attitude to it all, because I have worked so hard to get here. But go ahead, kick sand in my face. I can take it. Going on auditions again after not having to for 6 years. Rejection, it's old school for me. It's just, I've done it, been there, done that. You're not going to break me.
So you're
and I
new.
love to audition.
Oh, that's also quite rare. Not that many actors love to audition as well.
Oh, I love it, because again, it's like a short film starring me. I have a captive audience. People that I didn't come to see any plays I ever did, get to see my work. The crazy thing is, every time I audition, I think, God, I'm going to book that. They're going to call me. Even when I'm not right, I think they could change their mind. They could go with a blonde. It could happen.
I want to know your perspective on that, because you can do an amazing performance. And we've heard examples like too small, too tall, hair color, eye color, or you just might not look the right path. That would have driven me nuts to know that did a great performance, but maybe I'm too tall. How do you deal with that? It's outside of your
Well,
control entirely.
here's how I'll tell you I deal with it, because I just cast an episode of television.
Ooh.
And when you cast television, you describe what you're looking for to a casting director. We have 2 female showrunners who are phenomenal. They're on board, producing director, another producer. We all discuss what we think the characters are like, and then everybody picks their top 3. And my final word is not the final word, is the director, the showrunner's final word. But then that also goes up to the network, and the network can say, we'd rather this person or that person. So having seen that perspective of how many fingers are in the pie, how many people make that decision, yes, amazing actors. Sometimes they're just not right, or sometimes you don't get your choice. And you make do. So I'm not sure that anybody in my particular episode got their first choice, but once I had the person, I never looked back, and everybody was amazing. I got some great advice by this director named Mike Smith, does a lot of television in New York. And he said, the best advice I'll give you is don't worry about your shot list, just make sure every actor is good. And I made sure that every actor was good. I had some challenges with some of them because we're all challenging, but whatever people think of my episode, every actor does an amazing job. Some took a little more time, some took some more editing, but I did not want to leave any actor without shining in the episode.
I love that teamwork and collaboration. That's also different because I've heard some, and I think it's more in the minority. I haven't had the experience that you have, where it's all about like focusing on the angles and the shot, whereas yours is collaboration and wanting people to be the best.
It depends on the director.
Yeah.
And the way that I approach it, and that's the thing, is every director is different. I won't say who, but there was a director in season 1 that I said, I've been watching the episodes with the script to see what they keep. So I can figure out which performance, because I remember every take. And the director said, yeah, you remember every take. Trust me, you wouldn't think you would. You remember it. You'll watch it and go, oh, that's the one. That's the 3rd take. I didn't think they'd use that.
Interesting.
So this director said, oh, I don't even look at you guys. I just assume you can all act. I'm looking at the angles and the lighting and the camera movements. And I thought, what? But that's his approach. And he's a very well-known working director who has a different approach. My approach was make sure that every actor is the star of their episode. Like one of the young actors, her name is Christine Lee. It's her first gig. The other thing I did is I wrote every single actor when they got cast and said, this is why I loved your audition. This is why you're going to be great.
That's so awesome. And that would really help their confidence as well.
Oh, well, and I said, does anybody have any questions? And only one person had questions for me out of like 20 people. But this one young actress, Christine Lee, small part, she's fantastic. And I wrote her and said, that can be your reel. That's how good she is. I cut to her a couple of times. That's the thing, is I made sure that every actor is great. That's my approach. This other guy who's very well known, he does cool camera angles, and everybody's different. But again, it's what is important to you. And then the best thing about television, really about any of the arts, is the collaboration. You mentioned it. Oh my God. Because I got to work with people I know well, and they were so supportive of me wanting to direct. Wow. Like one of the guys, the camera guys, to explain the line, which is how you do your camera shots, that if we're talking to each other, the camera has to be on the same side of us. It's the line, so that when it's filmed, it looks like we're talking to each other. If we switched the shoulders, it would look like you're talking to someone else. It's just a camera thing. But he was so sweet. He would say, hey, test, what do you think the next shot's going to be? This is the shot. And he would draw pictures, and we talk about the line. And
oh, wow.
Everybody stepped up. And people said, what did you like so much about it? Because I didn't know how much I was going to love directing.
Oh, that's amazing.
I loved it so much, because when you're an actor, you come in, and you say your lines and you do your lines. And sometimes you have a more playful actor, like Michael's very playful. Some actors are less playful or more serious. But when you're directing, every single person on that set is on the same page.
That's also
So,
quite rare.
oh, well, it's actually not. That crew, everybody knows what their task is, and everybody's living in the present. For instance, it was a surgery scene, and I was supposed to have this beating heart that told the story because it was supposed to do VFib, where you got a flutter. The heart that they supplied did not work, and it looks like a junior high school project. So we shot one take of it, and I turned to my DP and I was like, John, it looks as bad as I think it looks. And he was like, it's pretty bad. So I said, great, we're going to tell it in faces. So on the fly, we just cut the heart. And we had a gentleman who was a doctor who was there. And I said, let's choreograph some movement. And there's an immediacy because TV moves so fast and it's per minute. And everybody steps up. And it was like going to work. It was like waiting tables. I don't know if you've ever waited tables, but when you wait tables, it's like, hey, it's the dinner service. We got to get these things out. Everything has to come out and you have to time it. And television felt like that. And it was fun because we were all in it for the same goal. And I didn't know how much I was going to enjoy being a leader because this book that I told you about called The Director Tells the Story, one of the things Bethany, as the writer, says is in order to direct television, you have to be a leader, not a cheerleader. And I thought, oh, shit, I'm a cheerleader. I am hands down a cheerleader. But in fact, my cheerleading helped because everybody was, it's pretentious to say, and I don't mean to be, but I could tell they were happy. And they told me afterwards that they were happy. And, we were all in it to win it. And I loved that. So I hope it's in my future. I'm working on it.
That is unbelievable of you. And for me, you've ticked off all the boxes, the collaboration, but also wanting to grow and work with people and expand yourself. That is super awesome. I wrote that not only will it help improve your craft, but it will help also how you relate and deal with people as well. So it amplifies also from a creative perspective, but also like you personally of how you, your interpersonal skills and all that stuff. And also good on Bull for providing those opportunities where you can also be in the casting room and see it from an outside actor perspective, because now you've got a greater lens of how it's all made because there's so many moving parts. Very proud of you. Many. I'm proud of the show as well.
I am very proud of the show. We have Catherine Price and Nicole Millard are the two women that are showrunners this season. They gave me this incredible opportunity. They gave our script supervisor, Melissa Kalfas-Paliocho, and she directed the episode before me. So she's been a script supervisor for 20 years, and she is now a director too.
Oh, I love these stories.
They gave so many people opportunities this year. I think that we all knew this was the last year on the contract, and what a way to go out with just anybody who wants to step up and try something new. They gave an opportunity to. It's really a great way to leave a show. So and CBS was super supportive. I mean, they've been very kind.
I also think that's also really powerful because people talk about it. You want to work in that environment again. And also the network, leaving a network on a high, that's quite rare as well because it depends.
Well, networks get such bad reputations, but if you look at our show, we have extremely diverse casting. We have lots of women in power. If you look at our crew, we have a lot of different people from different backgrounds. So it's a real representation of the world they want to create. And I know for working for them for the past 6 years that they make a real effort to be inclusive. They make an effort to see people. It's pretty doggone positive and rare. And I'm very grateful.
That's great to hear also on my end to know that environments like that exist. Did you say that it was a 6-year contract, meaning that from day one, everyone had to sign for 6 years?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never heard of anything like that in this day and age.
Oh, well, no, when you sign, I'll tell you right now, when you sign a television contract, when you sign for a major network, it is automatically a 6-year contract. They used to be 7-year contracts. When you sign for one of the lesser channels, because I was booked on a pilot. I had shot a pilot right before this pilot, and I had you signed a 3-year contract for one of the less big networks, like cable networks. You sign usually a 3-year contract.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And but network like CBS, NBC, all that stuff, you sign big time.
So I'm not sure how to phrase this, and I know Michael's amazing. I've heard him speak elsewhere, but I would also imagine he's got like kind of unfair pressure because he's the star of the show. And then if he doesn't want to be a part of it, which he's got every right to not want to be a part of it. And 6 years is a long time. And what's it like when, I'm just wondering, how does that work with people? Because it's also like their livelihoods and it's not his fault like this. And I wonder I don't want to like have a gossip session about him. I'll hopefully get him on.
Let's do it. No, you're so
positive.
generous the way that you speak about him, because of course I suspected that Michael was not going to continue because he had done another show called NCIS for 13 years. Then he walked into this show for 6. And it's exhausting. He's married to an incredible woman. They're raising 2 children. It's very time consuming. There is a great deal of pressure on the number one. And that's something that you should explain to people, because not only does he do the show and he's in almost every single day, he also has to do, the silly stuff of like next up on Bull and,
all the promo.
Previously on Bull and interviews. And it's a lot. And Michael said to me when he got the job, he said, I want you to watch me as the number one, because if you're ever a number one, you can imitate me or do better than me.
Ooh,
so obviously I'm ambitious and I would love to be the number one and do it my way. But I have loved working under his tutelage. And it was difficult for him to leave because the show is actually killing in the numbers. And
right.
CBS is devastated. I have this fantasy that it's not the end, but it's the end. Listen, you never know. We'll see what fans say. But yeah, it was hard for him to tell, because there are 400 people that are employed by Bull. There are 170 on the ground as crew.
400, wow.
And about 400 in total that work on it and edit, because all of our writers, our showrunners, our editors are in Los Angeles and we film in New York. So it was hard for him to say that, but he gave us notice. He waited till after Christmas. He was going to do it before Christmas. And I was like, Michael, please don't ruin Christmas. Please just wait. So now we know. And listen, we can prepare. And I am auditioning and looking for other things. But it's hard to let people down. And especially because we're so close.
Yeah.
Babies have been born. People have gotten married. I know these people so well, and I have made friends for life, and I will miss not seeing them on a daily basis because, as you know, the hours of television are so long. It's going to be hard for us to meet up, and it's very sad because I work with some astoundingly talented and kind people.
Because it becomes like a family, and you're probably working on average like 14 hours a day. And I'm sure you've got days that are a lot more, but that's probably the average, which says something. But
We're very lucky. We do about 12, which is for television. We have really cushy hours. We usually do around a 12-hour day. Sometimes it goes to 14, but we're very spoiled.
I like how that's spoiled, but I like that you're smiling because you're a very grateful person. But also, what I've noticed is when I've been speaking to people on air, off air, and just hearing, actually probably more just listening to other interviews, when people talk about their co-stars, it's when someone's brought up the question and then they feel like they need to talk about that person. But for you volunteered speaking about Michael, the show, and you brought up on your own accord and you actually mean it. And I think that is so awesome to hear that you've got this environment. And I think for me, that's what I crave, is to find like a family while you're working in your job or And I think that's very empowering for me, and it definitely will be for other people, that you can find these work environments, regardless if it's in creativity or not, that there are these environments that exist. It's beautiful to hear.
They absolutely exist. And I have to say that the show, recently directing, people keep asking, how is it directing your co-stars? I was so lucky that every single co-star was so supportive of me directing.
So good.
They gave me 100%, which was unbelievable. And, for CBS, I had to do these little interviews, and they're all just so happy for me. And the other thing is the actors, I knew almost every single one of the actors that I cast. And one of the women I cast, I did my very first job with her. She was the lead in this play off Broadway, and I had just a teeny weeny part. And I got to tell her that that was my first job, and she set the bar for how to be as a
Amazing.
professional. Kelly Overby is her name, and she's just an incredible actress. And it was so nice to cast her, and then she's just genius.
I like that these things happen where you meet up again and someone's inspired you. The last thing on the directing, how did you kind of deal, because this is a new experience for you, how did you deal with some of I don't know, maybe the negative chitter chatter or the nerves or whatever came up for you? Or did you feel that you had it 100% of the way? I know you gave that example with the heart, but how did you deal with?
Well, Michael gave me some great advice, because I tend to be an apologizer. If I forget my lines, oh, I'm sorry, can I do it again? I'm so sorry. And he said, don't apologize. And he said, I want you to go on set and you're playing a role, you're the director. And that really helped me, because I had all my little outfits picked out. And our showrunners teased me because I had to wear, I had my Geneva form, which is tank top, blazer, jeans. And I played the role of a director. And when that heart was embarrassing, I just made a choice and moved on. And when I had an actor that was challenging, I figured out what they needed. When someone's challenging, it's usually because they're scared or they're insecure, and it might present in a different way.
Yeah.
So everybody had different needs, but I stepped up, and the insecurity, I hid it. Because I told you I cried for 4 days before I started, and I was like, I can't cry on set, I can't do it. And I just sucked it up, and I played a role. And again, that was Michael saying, do yourself a favor. You're playing a role. Don't let him see weakness. And, oh, this is another good one. So the second day that we were there, I'm explaining the blocking and what we're doing. And the DP is, there because he's going to do the lights, and we've got my shot list. And one of the actors was fighting us on it. And so my DP kind of stepped up and coddled this actor to move the scene in a different way. And I was like, oh, but what about this? And it affects that. And he was like, don't worry about it, Jenny, we'll figure it out. And so I said, hey, John Aronson, who's a very well-known, respected DP. I was like, come here. I was like, hey, we can never not be a united front again. You and I have to always be on the same page. And he said, are you worried about Michael? And I said, oh no, Michael worships me. I don't want to appear weak in front of the rest of the cast, because I don't want them to pick up on me not being absolutely sure. So what he generously did is every morning we would meet an hour before call, have our coffee, go through the whole day, so that he and I knew exactly what was happening.
Oh, what a legend.
And again, that's somebody else stepping up, coming in early and working with me. And it taught me a lesson that you have to show a united front, because the actors need that. They need to know that everything's going to be okay. What's crazy is in the episode, I'm highly featured. I acted in it a lot. People are like, how is it directing yourself?
Yeah, I was about to ask.
Well, what I noticed is that I'm very relaxed in my episode, because I wasn't thinking about me. I was so worried about everybody else.
Ah, interesting.
So in my scenes, I'm not sure if I'm good. Other people will get to decide, but I'm definitely relaxed, because I was really concerned about making the other actor look good. And I know that will go with me for the rest of my acting, that make them look good and you'll look good.
Brilliant. I love that approach. Just before we do the rapid fire segment, I also had in my notes about your Tony experience, and I'd love to know everything about it. I know that there are a lot of highs and there were some lows as well, but going from a nobody, your words, not my words, and how it kind of changed your life in a sense.
I'm going to cry. Yes. Being nominated for a Tony when you're the dark horse and nobody knows you. It was my first time on Broadway. It was a little tiny play off Broadway that then went to off Broadway, and making those leaps with your friends was just astounding. And those people, I talk to them all the time. I love them. I give them a kidney if they needed it, because they got me through the best and the worst times of my life. I got divorced in the middle of that, which was extremely painful. I'm sure you can imagine. But they were there for me. And I say to people, that play kept me together because I had to tell that story. And being nominated with, they were all famous, all these actresses. And Helen Mirren, I really wanted to meet her, and I got to meet her. And the most gracious, kind, she came to see me right after she won the Tony, and she said,
Wow.
I had to beat you before I saw you on stage. But the first night she had off from her show, she came to see me on stage. So it was such a positive experience. And the producer, Kevin McCullum, who's a big Broadway producer, came to my room after the nomination. And, you know, we'd been performing. You get nominated and there'd be about 5 weeks of interviews and things like that.
Oh, wow, that long.
Yeah, they call it Tony season, and it's really exciting. I mean, for a nobody, it was hard because you have all these appearances and you're trying to, you know, cobble some kind of outfits together, and nobody's giving you anything for free. And you think that happens, you get nothing, just FYI. But he came into my room and he said, I know you're nervous about the thing. And I said, oh no, I'm not nervous, Kevin. Helen Mirren's going to win. She's going to deserve it. And I am just going to ride high on her coattails. And it's exactly what I did. And I knew she was going to win. She deserved it. I knew that I was close behind her. And that is enough. That sustains me when I feel dark or scared, or that there aren't opportunities, to be mentioned in the same breath of someone who not only is so talented, but just so you know, all the gossip is true. She is one of the most gracious people you will ever know or work with. That to me is more important, because I've worked with assholes, and she's such a gracious person that when you get nominated on a Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. And then the next day, you have about 40 interviews before you have a 2-show day. So they come into your room and they say, pick out an outfit, you know, just in case. And I said to the stage manager, that's terrible. You're giving me false hope. And then I had to pick out an outfit. So I do these interviews, and all I cared about was meeting Helen. At the end of the day, I saw her and I was like, oh, Helen, I'm Geneva Carr. And she came over and she said, oh, darling, just enjoy every moment. And it was just the sweetest thing. And I thought, oh God, that is great advice. And I did. Interviews and just meeting your icons, and just, you know, being on stage next to big fancy people when you were waiting tables 6 months ago is a freaking thrill. Wow. I mean, it was pretty awesome. So yeah. And the only thing is I did a gorgeous dress the night of the Tonys by Don O'Neill, who used to design for Thea. And so they lent me this gorgeous dress. They take you in a room and say, you know, what dress do you want to wear? And I was like, oh, that one. And then they said, try on some more, but I went with that one. And you go to the Tonys. You're so nervous. You do this red carpet where you have a million interviews as you're getting there. And then you go to the Tonys. I didn't remember that Bradley Cooper read my category because I was so nervous. I had to watch it on TV afterwards because you're so nervous. Yeah. You're like in a trance. And luckily I lost early on so that I got to just enjoy the rest of the night. And then after that, there are 3 parties. And the last one you finish around 5, 6 o'clock in the morning at the Carlisle Hotel, and they bring you breakfast. You're in these, you know, I was in Tommy Toon's hotel room at a party with all these people, and it's just otherworldly, and it's fun, and everybody's in a good mood, and everybody wants to meet people. So I just got to meet Judith Light and Cheetah Rivera and Helen, and it's just fun.
I want to know what these parties are like. Are they like wild, or is it more like a...
Well, wild in the sense that they're extravagant, you know, just crazy buffets of food with caviar and shrimp, and cocktails are flowing. but it is also kind of a business night. You know, I'm meeting people. So I wore a fancy dress that I was borrowing, so I didn't get drunk. People do get drunk, but they also know that it's kind of business. So it's a lot of
The best
dancing.
behavior. Oh yeah, I was just wondering. Yeah.
There's a lot of fun, but nothing too naughty. And I just will say this, you know, to you, but there's not a lot of bad behavior. There's not a lot of drugs in my industry.
I'm
In
surprised by that.
theater, there's not. Because in theater, your hours are too difficult. You can't be high and work that way. Television, same thing. These hours, I mean, I often get up at 3:34 in the morning. You cannot have a drug habit and continue it. It's ironically, it's a very clean living space because you work such crazy hours. Michael and I have talked about it. You can't go crazy. You might go crazy on Saturday night, but come Monday morning, you're up at 3:30, 4 o'clock. So it breeds a healthy lifestyle.
I've never heard that perspective. That is so interesting. And also,
Mhm.
the last thing on that, what was it like? You know, you mentioned like 6 months before you were a waiter, and now you're in this. You're with like potentially your heroes and the top guns in the industry. That would have. I don't even have words to explain that feeling. Like, did you think it would happen that quickly, or?
Well, it didn't happen quickly. I mean, I had been a guest star 40 times on television. Theater, I had not gotten a break, but I'd worked a great deal. But I remember when I was working at a very famous restaurant called Pastis. It's a Keith McNally restaurant. It's like hip. I used to be a maitre d' there. And I remember I had the cast of SNL one night. You know, it's one of those places where it's a big deal and it's fun. And what was I going to say? Oh, so I'd gotten a phone call from a producer and I thought, ooh, my gosh, this producer called. So I picked up the phone and called him back. And he called to ask if I could get a friend of his a job as a hostess in this restaurant. And the woman he recommended was a very well-known Broadway actress that I had seen. And I don't want to say her name because I don't know if she would appreciate it.
Yep.
But this producer was calling to see if I could get her a job as a hostess in the restaurant. And it was a wake-up call to how hard it is. I'd seen her on Broadway. This is not a person who was on Broadway once or twice. This is a woman who'd been on Broadway several times, but I guess was having a dip and needed a job waiting tables. And it's an education in the world can humble you. And she showed up, and now this actress has a company on the side. It's a sweets company. I don't want to say it is because I don't want you to know what it is, but she ended up having another career on the side, and I admired her for doing that.
It also would take away the pressure as well.
Yeah. So listen, I hope I'm not waiting tables. I don't think I will be, but listen, if I have to wait tables to pursue my dream, I will do it again.
Great take. And you navigate this how you want. If you don't want to go there, that's fine, and I'll cut it out. You also mentioned that there were some lows, i.e. dealing with a divorce, which divorces are the most stressful thing in the world. They're very challenging. We don't need to get too in depth. How did you kind of deal with that side while you're also going through probably the greatest high in your career at the same time as well? Because it's that real yin and yang.
This is hard for me to say, but I'm going to say it because I don't have shame about it. It's not my shame to carry. My husband left after the Tony nomination because he was jealous of my career. And
wow.
it was too much for him to bear. And so he left a week before the Tonys. And at the time, I wasn't public. The reason that I love my cast so much from Broadway is because they were the only people I told. I didn't even tell my friends because I didn't want it to taint the experience. He left a week before, and I told you it's a 5-week season.
Yeah.
So it was very hard and I'd spoken about him. We were not married for very long, but I was very happy. But success can affect other people in your life. And when it happened, and I told the producer, and we discussed that he asked if I would keep it private because it would take the shine away. When the playwright had been nominated first time on Broadway, the director was nominated first time on Broadway, the actor that I acted with first time on, no, it was actually his second, but it was such a huge experience that would have taken away from it. So the cast agreed to keep my secret and to support me. And I will admit it was very difficult to perform, but it is all I did. I just kept myself together. And so when you say how fun was Tony night, it was bittersweet because the truth is my heart was broken. And I think it's just healing. I think the pandemic helped me heal, ironically.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I think I finally am healed. And it's that thing of I let go of any anger, any resentment. I feel sorry that this person that I loved so dearly couldn't be happy for me, but he's on his own journey of success, and that's his journey. But I release him, and I'm living my life, and so it was very sad. But at the same time, I was supported by amazing people, talented, kind people. And that story, it was a really beautiful story about a mother and son finding each other. And it was really a play about how we can reach through darkness and trauma and help each other. And that's the only way you survive. So in the midst of losing my husband, being able to tell that story every night was cathartic.
Oh, amazing.
And it kept me from breaking.
Oh, that is okay. Congratulations to you too. Thank you for sharing that story, but also to have that community, which is you've created that, and to also be able, you're in this play, which is doing so well, but to see the positives, you have this amazing like growth and powerful mindset. And also to tie it all back to the releasing, that it's not your shame. It's beautiful to hear. So I appreciate that you brought all of that up. You're not just someone that like says the words, you live the words. So yeah, I'm very proud of you. And I know we just met today, but that's awesome. What we're going to do to wrap up the podcast is to do a rapid fire segment. So the first thing that springs to mind, but you can take time to think about it. And I won't comment on them because I'll derail them. And yeah. What are you most proud of?
Having friends that care about me.
What do you do for your mental health and physical health?
Gyrotonics and Pilates.
What's the most embarrassing thing to happen to you on stage or during your career?
I tripped on a telephone cord in Hand to God and blacked out in the middle of a show. And my friends thought it was just really amazing choreography because after about 30 seconds, I came to and just started wailing. I didn't know where I was. But we made it work.
30 seconds is a long time.
Yeah, they didn't know if they were going to bring the curtain down. I tripped and flew like a flying squirrel and just smacked down in the middle. But I guess I landed on my stomach, and you're so free on stage that it's like being drunk. I wasn't even hurt.
You didn't have a concussion or anything?
Nope.
I'm glad that you can go with the fly, and you're a better human than me. You're dedicated to your craft. Do you have a philosophy in life that you follow?
Wake up grateful.
If you could gain any skill in the world, which one would it be?
I'd love to sing.
Same.
I can't.
Oh, really? Are you being
Not
nervous?
yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I sing Happy Birthday and you're like, what version is that? I don't recognize that song.
It's actually really important because I can't sing at all. And I was thinking about it. I might actually get singing lessons because when I hear something a few times, it means I need to do it. So thank you for that positive reminder. What would you do if you knew you could not fail?
Wow, what would I do if I knew I could not fail? Well, that's a tough one. Write a play.
Can I ask more? Have you done anything like that before? Or the idea is brewing?
I've never done it, but I never thought I would direct television, and I did. So maybe I'll write a play.
I look forward to hearing about it and seeing it. If you could go back into a time when you were first starting out, what advice would you give yourself and why?
I would go back to myself in high school and say, don't take the safe route. Because in high school, I thought I wanted to be an actress, but I went to college and studied French, and then I got my MBA, and I started acting in my late 20s, and I wish I'd had the courage to do it earlier.
What was the worst thing about banking?
Thinking that money's the most important thing. I was working for a bank, and we were talking about investing in a company that was buying life insurance policies from AIDS victims. And so they would buy someone who was dying of AIDS, they would buy $1 million policy for $100,000. And I said, that just seems so unfair. They're getting so little money. And they said, oh, Geneva, they're going to die. They can take what they can get now. And that's when I stopped wanting to work in banking.
My brother, he's younger than me, but he's worked in similar industries, and he's had a few experiences like that as well. Doesn't mean it's all bad, but I know what you mean.
It's not all bad, but that was the moment that I knew my heart wasn't in it.
Very wise. So this is my favorite question before we ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with you and check out some of your projects. What is the one question I should have asked you?
The last book I read.
What was that?
Do you know who Samantha Wills is?
No.
Well, the ladies in your country will know. She's a very famous costume jewelry designer in Australia, and her brand in 10 years became one of the highest grossing brand in Australia. All over the world, she got tons of attention. She was a celebrity for her jewelry, and she closed her company. And she wrote a book about why she decided to do it. And I read the book while I was directing. And it's such an interesting book about her journey of creating a brand, letting it go, and doing what she really loves to do, which is help young entrepreneurs. And she's now going to Harvard in their like speed track entrepreneur program that's new. But the book was all about her hard work and her failures and her setbacks and how hard it was to do it, to make it, and then to leave it. And I really loved it. And I think people in your country will know her. And I highly recommend the book. I met her on my honeymoon of all places. And now that I've spoken to you, I'm going to reach out to her.
Amazing. And I'm gonna look into that story as well. That sounds amazing. So before we go, and I could speak to you for many, many more hours, how can people follow you, keep up to date with you, and all of that cool jazz?
Well, keep watching Bull season 6 until it's over, and hope that maybe it has another life. I am Go Carr Go on Instagram, Geneva Carr on Facebook, and Go Carr Go on Twitter. But if you just find Geneva Carr, I'm verified with that little blue check mark. And I respond to all my DMs if anybody wants to say anything nice.
That is very kind of you, and that'll be in the episode notes below so people can check it out. And yeah, thank you so much. You are amazing. And yeah, I've been rambling too much, but yeah, this is fantastic, and you're fantastic as well.
What a lovely, positive, fun conversation. We've just all been through such dark times. I really appreciate this. I didn't know what this was going to be. I've listened to your other ones, and I like your podcast because it is what it is in that moment. And thank you, because this was really fun for me. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I love Geneva's take on mentors and teachers. As she said, I think the best thing for my life is looking for people who can teach me something. Life can be challenging at times, and having people, regardless of what field they're in, can really help show us a different and hopefully more positive path. Having these people in our lives tend to challenge us and see the world in a different outlook. After noticing certain trends in these podcasts, it is my observation that by surrounding ourselves with leaders promotes well-being and overall success. It doesn't mean, let's say, finding a mentor and blindly following their lead, but observing both the good and the bad practices. Through this, we can identify their successes and non-successes and see what works for us. So I'll leave you with this epic quote by Brad Henry. A good teacher can inspire hope, ignite the imagination, and instill a love of learning. If you like this episode, share it around, tell your mates. It really helps grow the podcast and spread the positivity and love. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.